Well, Gitte Winter, it's lovely to have you here again. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to today.
Me too, because like you, I really am strongly interested in conscious parenting. I find that it's a hot topic, like a lot of people are talking about it. In fact, just recently I was at a little get together, and a couple of the parents were saying, you know, what do you do when Sienna misbehaves? And I was like, oh, she actually hasn't misbehaved that I could think of. And it was like kind of a mind-blowing experience, because it was like, wait a minute, you don't ever have to like discipline her. And it's really because I learned so early on that she would react really strongly if I raised my voice too high. Even if if my face was looking mean, you could see that it would just affect her energy. And so I had to really become a conscious parent, like quick and fast. So I'm excited to have this conversation, because in your beautiful book, The Children's Meditations in My Heart, which you know I love, you really help us parents get tuned into the idea of looking at our energy and our children's energy, especially at bedtime when we really want them to get to sleep so we can go have some parent time. And I love the way that you really give children the power to know their own energy and to fill themselves up with love. So anyway, I'm super excited to talk about this. And I know that one of the things that is of interest to you is energy. So let's start there. You know, we were talking before about how when a child is really freaking out, before we go and jump in and try to want to manage it, we really need to become aware of energy. Can you explain what you meant by that?
Yeah, well, there are many ways that we see energy in our children. So when everything is well, they're happy and they're smiling and they're hugging and kissing, and we know their love energy very well. We also know what it feels like when they're out of balance. So now that you have learned to parent from your heart and with a conscious mind, Shanna tells you all the time in her energy what she needs from you, and you interpret the energy beautifully so that you don't have to go and raise your voice. So the two of you have found a way to know each other's energy, and how you describe that is, to me, so beautiful. And that's what I have found with my own daughters as well. I remember not knowing about all these things when my daughters were born, and it was exactly their reaction to me shouting that made me think, okay, I don't want to be this kind of mother.
Yeah.
Ooh, I don't like to see that look in my daughter's eyes. So I started reflecting on what is going on? What is actually going on between parents and children, right? So there are different ways of communicating. So the child might be saying or shouting or screaming or crying something to the parent. The child has his or her body language to talk with, and then there is the energy behind it all. And those two are not necessarily telling the same things. So as the child is rather young, 2 years old, 4 years old, 8 years old, and acting out, for instance, it is very often a cry for help that comes out in a not so pretty way. Yeah. And it doesn't always make us want to help them, because we misinterpret. We listen to the words and we see the body language.
Yeah.
And then sometimes forget to understand the energy behind it. And that's what I really want to talk about today, is trying to get into our little invisible helicopter and zoom out for a bit and just watch what is actually going on in the big picture in my child's life right now. Yeah. And then the screaming, kicking, yelling, shouting is just a symptom of maybe something that's been going on for days.
Yeah. I think it's easy for us to do that. I love that analogy of that helicopter zooming out, because I think of the times when I see parents on an airplane and their child is reacting, or in a store, or in a restaurant. And it's easier to tell from the outside looking in, oh, I can see that the tired is, the kid's pulling at their eyes, they look really tired, or the kid looks like they're maybe teething, or they are really, really hungry. So it's easier to sort of understand why they're freaking out. Whereas when you're in it, sometimes it's just like, oh God, just be quiet, just make them shut up and don't embarrass me. So how do you advise a parent who's actually in the midst of a freak out or a meltdown to really get in tune with the energy?
Well, I think you probably just have described every parent's nightmare scenario, being on a plane. And believe me, I've lived in so many countries, and I actually once flew with 2 kids under 2 from Denmark to Canada on 4 planes. Took me 36 hours to get home to Quebec City. So believe me, I know all about flying with children. And it's a perfect example, because it actually highlights so many other things that are going on in the parent on that plane, because there is the child and the child's needs or behavior to analyze. If you look at the energy of the child, then there is the response of the parent. And if the parent, the mother sitting with the child, or the father, there can be so many other circumstances related to flying. So let's say the parent is actually a bit afraid of flying. So if you get on a plane with your child and you're actually a little concerned about, or afraid even, the child picks up on it like that, because they know so well. And then the child starts to get worried or anxious too, because it's totally reflecting on the child's behavior. And then the parent is trying to breathe and okay, I can do it. I can travel with my kid. I've been building up for days. But the noise of the child is affecting the parent's ability to stay calm. And then the plane takes off, and then the parent gets anxious, and the whole thing just, gets worse and worse and worse. And at one stage, when the kid has been crying for quite a while, the parent will start getting a bit embarrassed about the behavior of the child, and maybe even the way the parent is parenting at the moment, right? Mm-hmm. And then all the passengers looking at the baby or the mother, and she starts to sweat really badly. Yeah. The crew comes along to give advice or try to do something. And, all these things are just energies. And on that plane, you can't get off. Yeah. It's just, you're trapped. It might be a 12-hour flight, right? Yeah. It's a nightmare. So that's probably one of the worst cases, because when you are in public, you can usually wait with your parenting, or you can, go to somewhere where you don't have all the audience of how you parent. So I think you picked a very beautiful example of how bad it can get when we're trapped in all these emotional energies. So when we are at home, and I think sometimes energies on a plane, energies can be scary like that, right? But it's often that we behave better as parents when we are not at home. So we see a lot of parents who actually discipline harder when they are home alone with the children than when they are in public. So I'm not sure which is worse for the child, actually. So what I'm trying to get to is understanding that all these things affect each other. And I think, to me, it's like what we say and how we act with our body is maybe 10%, and 90% is the energy flowing between us. So that plane might be a very good example of how crazy it can get.
What you described is so accurate for me, that the words that I say, I could say the exact same words in a calm energy, not just calming my voice, but really embodying a calm energy, versus I'm saying those words because they're the right words to say, but I'm completely freaked out, because Sienna would totally pick up on the energy of it. And what I've kind of learned to do is if I am really anxious or I'm worried or I'm in my head, kind of upset about something, I'm learning now to kind of put up a shield so that, I'm not going to be fake because Sienna can see right through it if I'm trying to be fake. I'm just going to like protect it and not like vomit my negative energy out to her. But one of the things that you've mentioned before that people should do is really acknowledge the child's feelings. And something that I find interesting, you say, talk into the energy of the child.
Yes,
definitely. So tell me what you mean by that.
Yes. So I have like a 3-step method that I want to talk to you about today. So the first step is understanding the energy of your child. So understanding the energy of the child at that moment might often require for you to get in that helicopter and think about what has been going on for the last couple of days that might affect the way my child is feeling. So one of the big, often underlying causes is lack of sleep. So if you have an incident in the morning, the child doesn't want to get dressed, or the child doesn't want to get on the bus, or my child at the age of 8, these mornings, she doesn't want to bike to school. She wants to get in the car because biking is just, whoa, it's like a 2-kilometer ride and she does it very easily. But that can be what she's getting upset about is the bike ride. Okay. And when that happens, I know, well, it doesn't really have to do with the bike. So you also probably know that it doesn't really have to do with those clothes or eating that breakfast or whatever, toothbrushing or, it's not really, they can do it. And that might be what you are saying to the child. I know you can do it. I know you can do it.
Right.
But now the child can't do it because it's like an explosion inside of the child's head. So because of lack of sleep, because of too many activities, because something else had happened the day before, maybe a fight or whatever, that getting dressed becomes just too much. So it's not just getting dressed. It's what has happened for maybe 2, 3, 4 days, for weeks. It can be a traveling parent who hasn't been home. So I see this very often when my husband is abroad, that my children's energy is affected by him not being here and him not being present in every day. So how I often describe it is like a battery on a phone. So you see that you have the green battery if it's fully loaded, and then it shrinks to red. And sometimes lack of sleep, having fights, different things going on, a traveling parent or whatever, in divorced parents, then the child has to move to a different house. So sometimes the battery is just not very full. And that morning, something has been going on to just get that battery lower and lower and lower. And that means that getting dressed is just, I can't do anymore. I can't listen to any more demands. Don't make me do this too. So when we begin to see the big picture of what has been going on in the child's life, we often, the interpretation is often she or he is tired. There's too much going on. We have been running too fast. All these different kinds of stressful little symptoms have just been building up in the child's life. And when we feel that energy, instead of the screaming and the yelling and the bad words, we become, our reaction is different because we begin to feel sorry for the child instead of upset with the actions that the child isn't doing. And maybe we reflect that it has been a little tough. And maybe we think, okay, I have actually been tired too for the last couple of days. I understand that this weekend was maybe a little bit too much. So this Tuesday morning is crazy, but I actually feel tired too. Then we relate to the underlying cause in the energy instead of just that little action or missing action.
That makes so much sense. And so how do we talk into that energy then?
Yeah.
When we recognize it and make it as clear as you've just made it, what do we do next?
Yeah, well, then we start to talk to the child about the broader picture, what we see up in that helicopter. So we could say, are you tired? Are you too tired to go to school today? Do you feel really tired? Or do you has the weekend been a bit stressful for you? Do you think we're running out of the house all the time? Are you missing your parent if somebody's traveling, or if you're divorced? Are you missing mom? Are you missing dad, or a sister or brother, whoever? Just try to understand what is all of it, what is going on, and the child might not have thought these thoughts. Mm-hmm. So the child is like, whoa, she recognizes how I'm actually feeling. She's putting words on my feelings. And sometimes they'll say, no, I'm not tired, because they're all upset. And don't say I'm tired, and I'm never tired, and all these things. But yeah. The more calm you are when you say these things and talk into, I actually feel tired too. And I sometimes find it hard to get out of the door as well. And I remember when I was a kid, I could get tired from this or that, or, it could also be that the child is actually hungry. If you're in a mall and the child is acting out, the helicopter would be, okay, it's been maybe 3 hours since we had a healthy snack, or we might want to find a banana now, or something like that. So are you hungry would be like, instead of saying, don't act out and I don't want you to behave like this, it's just, you could actually be hungry. Is that the case? Oh, I'm hungry. Yes, I'm hungry. Actually, I didn't know, but I am hungry, right? Or I am tired, or I am thirsty, or all these underlying energies that could be going on. So trying to just, when you have interpreted the energy, you try to talk into it, and you might be just talking your way into it. You don't need to have the answer. That's what we've been talking about before. We don't need to be experts.
Right.
We just to try.
Yeah, I love that. It's a beautiful reminder, because many of us will try to fix. We try to overcompensate, and sometimes just that recognition of, I see what you're feeling, I can imagine how that feels for you, that acknowledgement and coming from that place of compassion can change the whole energy of the situation. Well, when we get back, I know that understanding our own energy, especially when the shit hits the fan, is really important. So I'd love to get your tips on what to do when we, as a parent, are feeling angry or frustrated or embarrassed when we get back. Tune in daily to get fired up with insight and inspiration for purposeful living, conscious relationships, and soulful success. You're watching Liberate Your Authentic Self with me, Dr. Andrea Pennington. Check out the live version of this show, where I answer your questions in real time. Visit facebook.com/Dr. Andrea Pennington. So sometimes we can take a little helicopter ride and really look down on our child's life to recognize why they're upset, why they're acting out, and why they're having that meltdown. But what about our internal energy? I know when I'm frustrated or tired, I can be short-tempered and a little bit irritable. So to help me, and to help maybe you too, Gitte Winter is going to share with us how we can really get in touch with our own internal energy and change it.
So yes, before the break, we were talking about how to understand the child's energy and how to switch into a compassionate way of parenting the child. So it's actually the same that we need to do with ourselves. So when the child is throwing a tantrum or shouting or misbehaving in any ways, we have a reaction to that behavior. And before we react, I just want us to try to pause for a minute and figure out what's going on inside of me before you parent. So that's what I talk about when I talk about parenting yourself first. There might be some dangerous situations, so let's talk about that first. Of course, you want to take away the danger immediately. So if anything dangerous is going on, take action and help your child. But let's say it's just a regular daily tantrum or something not dangerous, but frustrating. So the child acts out. And if this is going on quite often, the child very likely automatically pushes a response in the parent. And the parent on autopilot will just react immediately to the behavior of the child, or maybe the words or the body language. The child could be kicking or, throwing stuff even. And the autopilot in the parent will react and react with the way often the parent was raised when the parent was a child. So we just replicate the way we were raised, because that's all we know, right? There's no manual for this. When our children are born, we don't get that little manual saying this is the perfect way to raise this child, because they're even different when we get more, right? So when the child is acting out, like we talked about before the break, it's trying to figure out the energy underlying the problem that the child is having. And when you are in that investigation of what might be causing this tantrum, take a look inside as well, and maybe try to figure out why am I reacting the way I am. So let's get back to that plane, right? That crazy plane ride across the Atlantic with a screaming baby. So why am I reacting in my energy when I have a screaming baby on a plane? Is that I might be embarrassed about being this mom on that plane who can't settle her child.
Yeah. That was definitely me sometimes, especially, in takeoff and landing when little Sienna's ears would pop. Yeah. But, before she was big enough to put those little earplane things in, I just felt so embarrassed. I'm doing everything I can, doing everything I know to do. I'm nursing her, giving her, things to chew or suck on. And she would scream her head off.
Yes. So before that whole thing escalates, understanding that now you're getting, or because I recognize that as well, I'm getting a little embarrassed now. Okay, this has been going on for some minutes and people are starting to move around and look, and I'm attracting a lot of bad attention here. I don't really like this kind of attention. So right now, embarrassing feelings are building up inside of me. And being stressed on an airplane or even at home and having this embarrassment rising inside of you will then again affect the child. So let's be on that plane or in public and it's getting embarrassing. We can look at ourselves with compassion again, and we can say, so this is not really so pretty, but if I stay calm and I do my best and I talk to my child in a gentle voice, trying to understand the energy of the child, I'm also gentle to myself, we'll get through this. It might not be pretty, but we will get through this in a gentle and compassionate way. So another example can be that you react with being angry at your child and having a lot of temper as a parent. It's easy to shout back at your child. And I often see these parents in supermarkets, and they would say, calm down, I'm asking you to calm down. And the only thing the parent isn't is calm, right? So the child really needs to learn about this whole energy system. And the best way for the children to understand what we're talking about is if there isn't alignment between the things we say, our body language, and our energy. So first we need to take care of the child and understand the energy of the child. And then we take the mirror up and look, how am I reacting to my child? And if it's not a dangerous situation, it's very good to know that we don't need to react immediately. So something is going on, we pause and we wait and we parent ourselves, and then we react to the problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've definitely had to do that myself.
Yes.
I used to count until, it would affect Sienna. She was like, oh God, she's counting. She must be really mad. So now I have to do everything, internal. I don't do it so much anymore. But when she was little, then I just learned, okay, I'm just going to have to breathe and count in my head until I can get myself into a non-freak out place.
Yes. I think there is a lot of stress relief as a parent in understanding that you don't have to react immediately. And it can be counting to 10, but it could also be taking a break for 10 minutes. So when you get home and you see something that the child was supposed to do the dishes or clean up his room or take the laundry to the, washing machine or whatever, if you are not in a state where you can parent compassionately, you might just want to wait half an hour until you had your cup of tea and you had a little rest and, refuel some of your energy. Then you can parent much better. And the one thing that is always good to know is that the more calm you can be and the more compassionate you can be when you parent, there is a lot bigger chance that the child actually listens. So we know from a lot of research that the more you shout and the more crazy you get as a parent, the less the child actually hears, because the child is just seeing this monster parent going crazy in the energy, and they can't even hear what they're saying, because remember I said the energy is maybe 90% of it. So we really want to get to know the energy and also reflect on why we react the way we do. Maybe we are just replicating our parents. Maybe the child is tricking something inside of us that we haven't really dealt with yet. Maybe it's time to deal with some of those patterns of emotions inside of us so that we can also get rid of them, or not get rid of them, but deal with them ourselves. It would mean a lot also in so many other relationships.
It's so true. When I look back on the early years of parenting, I would get triggered and then I would act like my mom.
Exactly.
And then I would respond in the exact same ways that I saw her respond, just sort of like getting short and maybe screaming or yelling or just saying, just do it because I said. And that just did not work with Sienna. So I really had to get aware, okay, I can't repeat these patterns because it's not appropriate. It's causing even more meltdowns. And then I would go and I would feel guilty. But I love what you said in our first segment about this battery concept, because that was probably the biggest turning point for me as a parent, because in the beginning, I felt like I had to constantly be fully present all the time. And then I would wear myself down. And if we got into that red zone, I would lose it. And so little by little, I would give myself permission. And I even just state it to Sienna, you know what? Mommy needs to go have some meditation time or a hot bath or a nap just to kind of refuel. And I, over time, realized, okay, that doesn't make me a bad parent. In fact, it makes me an even better parent because I'm not going to scream and yell. I just had to refuel. And I think it's rubbed off because now Sienna is able to manage herself as well and set better boundaries with, even when she's playing with friends, when she knows that she needs to recharge and refuel, she does.
And that's so beautiful. And that's actually one of the big benefit of parenting consciously and getting aware of your energy is that while you train as a parent, and I'm saying this is very efficient, but it's not very easy to begin with. This takes a lot of practice and training. But while you train, you might want to train something to become perfect. Well, this is not the case. I don't think we will ever become perfect parents. I'm not sure I'm even aiming at becoming a perfect parent. But by trying every day, by rehearsing, by doing it better today than I did yesterday, I show my children that the training of understanding energy is so important. And just like you say, hopefully, we teach them that we regulate, and then they know, okay, you can regulate, and then they find their way of regulating. I often imagine that you have a gas station, and you have the two cars, two children pulling up to the gas station, and the mother's energy is the gas, right? And they plug in, click, click, and they suck out all the energy of the parent. And they run off and they have a good time, and the parent is just, sold out, right? So I always tell my kids that I have my gas station inside of me and I know how to refuel it. And I want you to get to know your own, right? I want you to get to know how you can refuel, and not only from my energy as a parent or their fathers or each other, but on your own. And I think that's the third step in this methodology I'm talking about today, is understanding how to fuel energy and actually channel it to your child.
Well, that is a really big topic, so I don't want to jump in until we've taken a break. But I think it's really like the key, right? Because what I noticed in my own life is if I don't have time to go and meditate or to take a nap, I've got to find another way to get that energy in to keep on moving. And I love what you're talking about, communicating to our children that they need to also understand how to navigate their own energy. Because I think for some of us, I'm just talking about me, I noticed that in the very beginning of those first few years, I always felt like everything was dependent on me. So I poured my energy into her. It wasn't just that she was draining it. And then little by little, I've realized, okay, you also need to know how to, refuel yourself, Sienna. So whether it's going off and coloring or listening to music or meditating or doing something different, teaching her how to find things that refuel herself was really important. So when we get back from the break, I'd love it if you'd explain what you mean about us learning how to channel energy for ourselves as well as for our children.
Let's do that.
You're watching Liberate Your Authentic Self with me, Dr. Andrea Pennington. Check me out on Instagram at Dr. Andrea Pennington. And now, back to the show. So it's pretty easy for us to drain ourselves as parents, or for our children to drain us. But we need our energy just as much as they do. And today's special guest, Gitte Winter, the author of The Children's Meditations in My Heart, is also an expert in managing energy and teaching us how to be conscious parents and how to channel energy. Sound a little weird? Sound a little woo-woo? Well, I mean, we're kind of like hybrid cars, right? We can eat and drink fuel, but we can also tap into another source. So Gitte, talk us through that. What is this concept that you mean about channeling energy?
So I want to start by giving an example of how not to do it.
Okay, that's good. That's practical.
Or even how I found out that I needed to understand this concept myself. So when my girls were little, like 2 and 4, I would pick them up from kindergarten. I would be so happy and smiling and full of energy going to the kindergarten. And we have maybe, I would say, a 3-4 minute walk home. And, coming to the kindergarten all full of energy, picking up the girls with whatever it takes to get a 2 and a 4-year-old to walk home and get dressed and all the things. Everything would go well. We would walk home. And when they saw our front door, they would start to scream like it was a monster. I'm like, what's on that door? It's a white, all natural, like neutral door, right? And I would, we talked about embarrassing neighbors and stuff. I was like, okay, let's get inside and deal with this. So quickly getting them inside, closing the door, and just like, okay, everything would go crazy inside. And I would do everything I could to hug them or give them food or trying to figure out what the devil is going on with my children. And this would go on every day. Like for a long period until I'm like, okay, something is completely off. And what happened after 20 minutes of, like crawling all over me, I would just sit on the couch and I would just let them suck my energy out. And that's actually what they do. They touch you, they crawl on you, they hug you, they crawl up and they crawl down, and they're just like all over, run in a little circle that gets bigger and bigger, but come back to you all the time. And I would just sit there, and many days I wouldn't even be able to make them something to eat because they just needed to be close to me. And they had been gone for 4 or 5 hours. It wasn't one of those 10 hours long days that many Danish children unfortunately have. So what happened was that they would be happy again, and they would run off and play. And I would be lying like this on the couch, just drained. I'm like, oh my goodness, what is going on?
Yeah.
And we see that now. Now I talk a lot about bedtime routines because of the book I wrote. And a lot of parents are so exhausted when they get out of that room at night. And they barely have time to refuel.
Yeah.
They barely have time to talk to the partners, or it might be so late that they actually have to go to bed, or they will fall asleep on the couch. Well, I felt like that those afternoons. So what I was taught when I was trained for healing and meditation and energy work was like magical to me. And I want to share this with you today. So what I found was that instead of giving them my resources of energy, all that I had inside of me, and becoming this ugly version of myself afterwards, instead of doing that, I could channel energy through me to them. I think this, depending on how spiritual minded you are and how much you're ready to go into woo-woo land with us today, this doesn't have to be so woo-woo. It can be energy from anywhere you already get energy. So it might be a walk in the park. It might be from exercising. It might be from hanging out with friends. So what you actually need to do is imagining, where do I know I get refueled? What is the sources that refuel my energy? So for me personally, a walk in the forest in the morning is always good when I'm stressed out, or when I'm feeling a little, there's too much going on. I walk in the forest and I refuel in the forests. So if we don't want it to be too spiritual, I can just close my eyes and imagining my forest, so where I get energy. So for you, it can be when you are running or at yoga class or hanging out with a good friend. You just close your eyes and imagine that situation, because the cool thing about our brains is that the brain doesn't really know if it's happening or you are imagining it. So you can tap into that energy even with not being with that friend, or like sometimes I really need a hug from my mom and she sends me hugs and I imagine, okay, I get my hugs. Even though I'm 40 years old now, I still need a hug from my mother once in a while. And she's like 3 hours by car away, right? So we can imagine all these kinds of sources of energy. So what we do is we close our eyes and we have this kid going a little crazy in front of us. We close our eyes and we imagine that place in the forest, or yoga class, or a hug from our own mother, or something like that. We get into the energy and we try to sense it with as many senses and emotions as we can. And then we let it run through us and out from the chest onto the child. So it's like channeling of energy. And if you want the more spiritual version, you can tap into source or connect to God or whoever you believe in. So you sort of connect to that source of energy and you let it flow through you. So it could be another person, it could be a yoga class, it could be a walk in the forest, it could be so many things to so many different people. And the cool thing is that as you run it through you, you also get refuel. Instead of like pulling out the energy, like you said, I'm pouring it onto Shenna or she's dragging it out of me, we just let more energy flow through the two of us. And I was just sitting. So these tantrums with my youngest daughter could go on for 5 or 10 minutes if I was just doing my normal things. And when I started doing this, I wasn't even saying a word. I was just channeling energy to her. And within minutes, she would calm down. So this is really powerful.
Yeah. What it brings to mind for me is my Qigong practice. You know, and a lot of what Qigong is, it's about the breath and the movement. And as we breathe in with Qigong, we're imagining that we're bringing in this Qi, that life force energy all around us. And you bring it in through your nose or through the top of your head, and it's refueling or repairing the body. And you can exhale it out. And in Qigong, we actually might use our hands to direct some of that energy. I love that you're saying we can direct it from our heart out to our child. And I also do it through the breath. So I love that. I love that because to me, it's actually not woo woo, I guess, because of doing yoga and doing Qigong. It's just like, wow, we're tapping into this universal energy that's around us. It's in the air. It's in the rocks. It's in the trees, in the wind, in the water. And we can actually draw it in with our imagination, or we can draw it in with our breath or with our eyes. We can appreciate the energy from nature. And, I have friends who are athletes who talk about doing this, like when they're out on a run or they're competing and they can sense that maybe they're a little fatigued or they have an injury. It's as though they've talked about being able to pull up energy either from the earth or what have you to repair their body or to give them extra strength. So I love that you're giving us this idea that we can channel it from wherever, including a memory.
Exactly. And there are so many different types of energies out there from nature given to us when we walk by the sea, or when we make a fire in the garden, or we walk in the forest, or, there are so many ways and so many different elements to tap into, and source and light and love. And there are so many different ways. So I'm sure there's something for everybody to relate to that they know already refuel them. And once we start as parents to become aware of what is refueling us, and we start to appreciate that we can get more and more of refueling, we deal with our inner stress. So long-term stress is a result of more challenges over a longer period than resources.
Yeah.
So as we refuel a little bit every day, we not only refuel at the moment, but we also build up our resilience towards stress. So this is sort of like a wonderful circle going on, that when we refuel a little bit in those moments of actually having quite stressful situations with our children, instead of becoming more stressed, we refuel. So instead of having another challenge, we refuel. And that means that instead of having a little bit more stress every day, like I explained before, when I was sitting on that couch, I shift the balance to having more resources and actually challenges. And that's what you beautifully described in the beginning of this interview, was that you don't really have those tantrums because the two of you are refuel.
Yeah.
Like you have many resources and less challenges. And the minute that balance shifts, I know that even today, being an entrepreneur and selling books in 20 countries now, and like a lot of things going on, I know that this can change. And then I just need to pause and think, okay, I think we're something is happening with the balance. And then day by day, I slowly get it back in shape.
Yeah.
So it goes like this, but we want to keep the resources higher than the challenges.
That's a beautiful description of resilience. It's really resourcefulness. And I always focus on the fullness, like resourcefulness. And so what are those resources that we develop? We develop patience. We develop tolerance. We develop compassion. But we can develop those not just in our mind, but by doing these little practices, being out in nature, or reading or meditating or doing these breath practices and yoga. I love it. And I love that you're touching on this idea of the elements. And in fact, your next book,
yes,
the one that has just come out, not yet in English, but it will be soon. Talk to me about this new book, Valley of the Hearts, because you are explaining to children about the 4 elements.
Yes. So this is my new book. It's just been published in Danish.
Congratulations.
And, thank you. And I'm looking into having it translated. I've been working with these energies and elements for quite some time with adults. And I've seen that by teaching adults to reconnect to their primary element, they also get to understand a lot about their characteristics. So if fire is your element, getting to know your inner fire both helps you understand why you're passionate and you're like, okay, I'm getting a lot of things done. But it might also, if the fire is not in balance, it also can explain to you that you might have a lot of temper, right?
And burnout.
And burnout on the other side. Or we also know these people who the flame is so little they can barely feel their passion, and they have no idea what they're doing in life because if they have no light inside of them. The flame is so little it's almost gone, right? So you can have a burnout like from having way too much fire, but you can also just have little by little dimmed your light, right? So the elements in this book, there are many elements. If we talk through different native cultures all around the world, so I love traveling. I've been to a lot of places, and I love how the elements are present in so many different cultures. So I know you're into Chinese medicine. You have even more elements than the 4 elements.
We have 5.
You have 5 elements, yeah. And I think you don't call it air, you call it metal, right? Or
yes, we have metal, wood, fire, earth. Yeah.
So this is drawn from Native American tradition. So it's water, air, earth, and fire. And by walking around in the Valley of Hearts with this Indian chief who is teaching us about natural elements, we get to know that nature is around us to help us heal, but nature is also inside of us. And we can heal the same way that nature heals. So if you have a fire and you put earth, it's not called earth, then it's called soil. Mm-hmm. Is it called soil on it, or water? It how do you say it? It
puts the fire out.
Yes, exactly. Or if we have a lot of water and we put soil in the water, the flow can stop, and all these different things. And we can use the meditations of the Valley of Hearts to actually regulate these characteristics inside of us. I love it. So I want to teach the children about the elements because, like we just said, it doesn't have to be woo-woo land or, very spiritual, religious. It's just nature, and it's just outside. We just need to go into nature more and understand that we are a part of nature ourselves.
That's beautiful. And is this book also illustrated by the same person?
Yes, actually you can see in the back of it, you see the mountain from the
same
first
mountain. Yeah.
Yes, it's the same mountain. Elsie Ralston, beautiful illustrator from Peru. And what I've come to understand is that in the first book I teach children to fill up their hearts with love, and the love is inside of the mountain. And if enough children have a mountain of love, then it becomes a mountain range, right? Ooh. So it's like the Valley of Hearts is inside all these love mountains, and the children can easily feel their love energy when they are in the Valley of Hearts. So the 2 books are very much interlinked.
I love that. So symbolic and beautiful and tied to nature. Well, Geeta, this has been a really insightful conversation, and I hope it's been helpful for many a parent who's listening in. If you'd like to learn more about Gitte Winter, her books, and her coaching, you can visit roomforreflection.com, and she's also on social media, sharing some Facebook Live presentations where you can even ask questions and whatnot. Geeta, what else should we know about connecting with you?
Well, pretty much on the social media, and there is a lot of blogs on roomforreflection.com, and you're very welcome to send me an email if you have questions. I'd be happy to help.
Wonderful. Well, it's been a pleasure, as always, to connect with you, and I look forward to our next conversation. And my friends out there, I want you to remember that no matter the stress, no matter if you've lost your temper, tomorrow is a new day. So just take some deep breaths and forgive yourself. And remember that you are a gift to the world. So share your presence with passion. Much love. Bye. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to follow me on Twitter @Dr. Andrea. And did you know I'm on the radio daily? Visit AmericaOutloud.com to download the Talk Radio app.